Yes, so that's what we're talking about today, just very quickly. So if you just kind of throw all caution to the wind on the weekends and you kind of, start your diet over Monday, like every Monday, then you need to understand a few things. One thing that you want to know, if all caution is thrown to the wind every single weekend, number one is that if you're starting Friday with that mentality and going through Saturday and Sunday, that is like a third of your week, almost half if you're including Friday. So if you're already tossing everything out 3 days out of 7, then you your results will show that. So if you're only good, like 2/3 of the week or half of the week, then you should kind of expect your results to show in half the time. So you have to understand that if that's what you're doing, if your weekend eats are drastically different, then number one, you are ruining probably 1/3 to 1/2 of your week. The nights are bad. See, that's another one. So on that note about the nights being bad, if you tend to have more binges at nights and weekends, then that is your first clue to look at the rest of your day and the rest of your week. So if you are typically, everything's falling apart nights and weekends, you want to just like eat the tile off the kitchen floor and you're like, oh my gosh, I am so hungry, and you want to eat everything. Sorry, there's a jet going overhead. If that's happening to you, then typically you are, things are a little too perfect during the rest of the week, which I know that's like hard to believe. But one of the things that's hard for a lot of us to understand when we're dieting is that restriction begets binging. So typically you're holding back too much during the first half of the week, so then you just like let it all hang out the last half of the week. Or if it's happening at night, it's the same thing. Like things are almost too perfect during the day, so then they kind of fall apart at night. And part of that is just the fact that self-control is an exhaustible resource. So if you are dealing with all sorts of things throughout the day where you're having to have some sort of self-control, or throughout the week where you're having to have self-control, then as soon as you get to a point where you're just completely out of that self-control, then it starts to show in other areas. So maybe you're having the perfect diet, but then you're like lashing out at your family, or you're, stuck in traffic all day, you're biting your tongue from your boss and not saying things to him or her, and so by the end of the day, you just want to eat it. So that's one of the reasons why we tend to do those things, is because you can't pick where your willpower comes from. So eventually you run out. So if you're having to utilize willpower in multiple areas, eventually you just have too many balls juggling in the air and it falls out somewhere. So it makes sense to you? Good. I'm glad that makes sense. So if you are constantly like, Friday comes and you're just like, the first good tasting meal maybe you have, you're kind of just like, you start into that I'll start my diet Monday mentality. Just keep those two things in mind, that if you're starting over every Monday, then you're missing half the week. So your results are going to take like twice as long. And if you are completely out of control, then you may be over restricting or using all of your willpower in another area. So you want to make sure that you're eating enough food, because if you're not eating enough food, then that's where it's going to show us. By the end of the night, you're just hungry. So it's all going to come together. It's going to come to a head at that point. So there's em2wo.com/start, the address that's right there. It's also in my bio. You can click on that, and that gives you, there's a video series and a guide. It's all free. It tells you like how much you should be eating and stuff like that, because if you're not eating enough, then you're also going to see those binges. You're going to see, because you can only hold back for so long, and then eventually you're going to start restricting. Hey, Katie. It's emotional. Yeah, and that's where a lot of times the emotional eating comes from. It comes from that stress being in too many different areas. Your self-control being used in so many areas that eventually you need an outlet. You need somewhere to just kind of let go. And sometimes that ends up being the eating. You need something that you can just like, I just need to not think and not use my brain and not do anything, and so that ends up being your food. So if it's happening at nights, then instead of focusing so much on what's happening in that moment, you need to go back and find out what triggered it. Go back and find out, okay, what did I over restrict that day? Like, was my eating too perfect, or was it a really, really stressful day? Because a lot of times with my clients, I'll tell them that. Sometimes if they'll, they'll let me know like, oh my gosh, I'm having the perfect eating day and I have so many calories left over, and, and everything was so perfect that sometimes I will tell them like, okay, I think I need you to add something to that. I will tell them like, go have a little piece of chocolate, go have something, because even though in that moment it may not seem like a big deal, sometimes it shows up like 3-4 days later, you know what I mean? So I'll have clients that they're feeling so confident all week long, and I'm telling them like, I think you need to add a dessert in, add a treat in, add something in throughout these other days. And they're like, no, I'm fine, I'm great. But then the weekend comes and it's like, okay, I ate 3 bags of Reese's or something like that. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's when the out of control part happens. Thank you for the hearts, you guys. So just know that, try to catch those triggers. So when they do happen, when the binge happens, go back and see, was any point, was I eating too perfect? Was I trying to eat too clean? Was I not eating enough calories? And like I said, if you don't know how many calories or how much you should be eating, you have no idea where to start, go to em2wl.com/start, and I'll walk you through all the rest of it. It's all like free information that I just kind of help you understand how much you should be eating. But always look at what happened before. So that helps also with your workouts. When you're seeing certain things happening, typically what's happened came from something that you were doing before. When you're binging, it's not necessarily about what's happening in that moment. So don't beat yourself up too much about it, but try to look back and see, what was I doing? Where was I over restricting or trying to be too perfect perhaps, that now I'm paying for this? And just try to spread things out a little bit more, because identify the triggers. So a lot of times I like to say, and you guys, if you follow me on Instagram, you see me posting this all the time, that like a 250 calorie deficit that you stick to is better than the 500 calorie deficit that you blow every weekend. So trying to have like a really extreme deficit all week long, and then you're eating 3 times that amount on the weekends, it just undoes everything that you were doing before. And the same thing with trying to be too perfect. If you're eating super, super perfect, super, super clean all week long, and then on the weekends, all you're doing is eating fast food, junk food, convenience store food, like every piece of junk, chocolate, baked goods that you can get your hands on, then you didn't really do yourself much justice by the super clean eating that you had all week. Yeah, absolutely. The extreme yo-yos, that's how we get on that path, because we start equating perfect to that's how we diet, and then that develops an all or nothing mentality, because then when you're not perfect, you're like, oh well, since I'm not being perfect, I might as well just keep going. So Leslie, I'm so glad you joined. And if you guys missed it, we had an awesome interview. I talked with Leslie. She's a dietitian, and she talks about all this stuff all the time too. So we had her on and we talked about binge eating and why diets don't work. And this part of it is a huge, huge part of it. And it's because of the over restricting. So when we are, a lot of times it comes when you're dieting. So check your diet. Make sure you're eating enough all week long. Make sure you are not trying to have so steep of a deficit that you go overboard that night or on the weekends, because all you're doing is canceling out the effects anyways, and then you can't stick to it. So denying it causes stress. That used to be me. So glad I've come so far from there. Yeah, absolutely. So just remember, if everything becomes an unadulterated binge on the weekends, then you probably over restricted during the week. Okay? Always go back to the week. Don't just say, oh, this thing was too tempting to me, I can't have it in the house. Because maybe if you had allowed yourself to have a few of those, like instead of eating the whole bag of Hershey's Kisses that weekend, if you had allowed yourself to have, 2 to 3 each day, then you wouldn't have eaten the bag. It's just that because you start to develop the all or nothing mentality, you start to feel like, okay, well, while I'm doing this, I may as well just keep going because I'm going to start my diet over. So if your diet already includes those things, then you're never off it, even when you do eat it. So plan it with no guilt. Yes. One of Leslie's tips, she gave tips the other day talking about planning and how to plan out your meals and stuff for the week and self-care. And one of the things that she was saying was plan to eat meals that you actually like. Like, what? Mind blown. Like, we never think about that on a diet, to like try to eat things that we actually like. I allow Mexican lunch with the kids Saturday, but it's healthy and it's planned. Right. Yes, we have the screw it button. Absolutely. That's the all or nothing. We're like, well, I already ate one donut. I may as well eat the dozen. You don't want that. You don't want to go crazy just because you had one thing. You know, like you can have that donut and then you can go back to eating exactly the way that you were eating before. So when you have the balanced mentality, and then you understand that you can have that thing anytime during the week. The stuff that you're eating on the weekends, you could probably have anytime during the week. Like right now, I'm getting ready to go out with my husband and we're going to have pizza. And not just because it's Friday, because I can have pizza any day of the week if I want it. And that's something that you should know and should feel in control of on your own journey. If you don't feel like you can have, I wish I was Mexican. If you don't feel like you can have anything that you want any day of the week, even when you're on a diet, then it's probably not sustainable or healthy. So you really want to think about that. And it's not necessarily that you should be eating all of it. Yeah, one meal won't make you healthy and one meal won't make you fat. So it's, yeah, see, unless it says she's going to eat some candy with her kids for Halloween. So if you know that, then that takes away the I need to eat it all right now or eat it in secret mentality. Because you know that you can have it anytime. Like there was a point in time where I thought that I could not have chocolate in the house or I would just eat it nonstop all day, every day. Now I can have chocolate sit around forever and not even touch it. Oh, that's only because I know that I can eat it whenever. So it's like, yeah, I may get that. And then I just decide not to. So it's all a decision. You decide to eat something, you decide not to. That is a healthy mentality. So if you make a decision to eat something, have a treat this weekend, please do. And it's still okay to eat a healthy meal after that, before that, or whatever. It doesn't have to be, you felt so bad after having a calzone today. See, that's exactly it. Like, don't feel bad. You just make the choice, Katie. You just have the calzone and you have whatever else you're having with it, a salad or water or whatever, and then it's right back to the next one. Don't wait till Monday to start over. Like, start over moments happen at every meal. So your day, never look at it like your day is ruined by something. Just know that you can just get back on track. You know what I mean? And literally, it shouldn't even be considered being off track. It's just a decision. It's just, I'm going to eat this calzone or piece of pie or burger or fries or whatever, and it's perfectly okay to eat that and then go back to eating whatever it was that you were supposed to be eating. So it's not like, it didn't ruin it. So when you get out of that mentality, it actually helps you to move on, and you see like, okay, I'm going to have this for breakfast, and then, you know, I'm going to tone it down a little bit for lunch and dinner or whatever. So just a weekend tip. I hope you guys enjoy your weekend, enjoy some treats. If you have no idea where to start, go right there to em2wl.com/start. There's a whole video series and I'll walk you through everything about how much you should be eating and why you should be eating probably more than you are.